My name is Alyssa Monroe. I was 16 when my parents took me to Portugal. They called it a fresh start trip. I'd just been suspended for skipping school too many times. My grades were slipping. I was angry all the time. And I think they were embarrassed. My mom said I needed a break. My dad said nothing. He rarely did. When they booked a last-minute trip for the three of us, no little brothers, no business calls, I convinced myself it was real. Maybe this was their way of reconnecting. The first few days felt strange, but not bad. We strolled through cobbled streets in Lisbon, took photos with street art, shared pastries and laughs I hadn't heard in years. One afternoon, while waiting to board the ferry to Madeira, my mom wrapped her arm around me. I thought, maybe this is what healing looks like. Our flight home was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. We had breakfast at the hotel, eggs, fresh fruit, espresso. My mom wore a yellow scarf, the one she usually saved for Easter Sundays. My dad kept scrolling on his tablet, not really reading. Then, casually, my mom said, "We're running down the block to grab some souvenirs. Stay here, we'll be back in 10. I didn't even look up. I was texting a friend back home. But they never came back. An hour passed, then 3. I finally asked the front desk if they'd seen them. The clerk looked puzzled. The couple from room 507? They checked out earlier this morning. Confused, I ran upstairs. The room was empty. My things were gone. Passport, suitcase, even the hoodie I always tied around my waist. My heart sank. I called their phones. Voicemail. Texts undelivered. I didn't know what to do. I sat on the hotel steps crying until a kind couple noticed and walked me to the nearest police station. The next morning, I went to the U.S. Embassy, terrified and exhausted. A woman in a gray suit listened patiently, then checked something on her computer. She looked at me gently and said, "Your return ticket was canceled. You've also been removed from their travel insurance and emergency contacts." That's when I knew. They hadn't forgotten me. They had abandoned me, on purpose. I'm so sorry. It hit me all at once, cold and sickening. They didn't forget me. They removed me. They didn't leave me behind. They left me out. That night, I returned to the hotel lobby, hoping, begging for something, a message, a note, a clue, anything to make it make sense. All I found was tucked in the inside pocket of my denim jacket. A small piece of folded paper, my mother's handwriting, only one line. "You're 16 now, old enough to figure it out." That was it. No "we love you," no goodbye, just a sentence that cut cleaner than any knife. I wandered the cobblestone streets of Lisbon until my legs gave out, finally curling up behind a bakery tucked between 2 shuttered buildings. I cried until my chest ached and my throat burned. Somewhere down the road, a guitar played. Laughter spilled from a cafe. Maybe a wedding, maybe a birthday. Somewhere a family celebrated. And me, I was a shadow on the sidewalk, forgotten. I opened my phone and stared at our last photo. My mom in her yellow scarf, my dad standing stiff beside her, me stuck in the middle, pretending, smiling. But now I remembered more. The red stamp on that envelope my dad held the week before the trip. Final notice. The way my mom kept whispering on the phone, too low for words, too sharp for comfort. And one night, I wasn't asleep like they thought. "We can't take her with us," my mom had snapped. "She'll ruin everything." "She's not a kid anymore," she hissed. "She's barely holding it together." "So are we," my dad replied, his voice tired. They hadn't been talking about a vacation. They were planning an exit, one that didn't include me. I didn't sleep much the first week. I tucked myself behind the bakery again, near a dented trash bin that gave off just enough heat to keep my hands from going numb. My jacket zipped to the chin, my arms wrapped tight around my ribs. I counted the crates thudding, the glass bottles clinking, during the early morning deliveries just to stay grounded. On the 3rd morning, I got caught trying to steal a roll of bread off a tray by the back door. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. My fingers were so stiff, I could barely grasp it. A hand grabbed my wrist. I froze. I expected shouting, "Police! Deportation!" Instead, a woman with silver hair and flour-dusted skin stared at me. Her apron was faded, and her gaze was sharp enough to slice dough. If you're hungry, she said in accented English, you work. Her name was Lucia, 68, widowed, ran the bakery on her own for decades. That morning she handed me a mop. That night she pointed to a cot behind the flour sacks. No questions, no pity, just space. It wasn't warm, but it was safe. And after everything, I would have taken safe over love any day. Lucia never asked about my parents. She didn't have to. I think she already knew. Day by day, I earned her quiet trust. I scrubbed trays, hauled sacks of flour I could barely carry, and copied her every move. Eventually, I learned to knead dough with my eyes closed. She'd mutter things late at night while wiping down the counters. One evening, as we shaped loaves together, she looked at my hands. My daughter had hands like yours, she said softly. Always smelled like yeast, always too curious. I didn't ask what happened to her daughter. She never mentioned her again, but from that night on, she began setting aside the imperfect loaves, wrapped in paper, placed quietly by my cot. It was the first time in weeks I felt something like love. Small, silent, but real. And one afternoon, I found an old laptop in a dumpster. Cracked screen, rusted hinges. But I saw possibility, just like she saw in me. If Alyssa's story moved you even a little, don't forget to subscribe. Her journey is far from over, and what she builds next will leave you speechless. I taught myself how to connect to public Wi-Fi. Awkwardly at first, stealing signal from the cafe across the street when it was slow in the bakery. I found an online GED program and enrolled under a fake name. Every evening after Lucia went upstairs, I'd pull out the cracked laptop, sit next to the humming refrigerator, and study by the glow of the screen. I solved algebra problems while the scent of cinnamon and roasted sesame filled the air. And every time I finished a quiz, I whispered my score like a prayer. Small victories, quiet ones. I kept the same denim jacket, the one I wore the day my parents left me. Not for comfort, but because the note was still in the pocket. You're 16 now, old enough to figure it out. Sometimes I unfolded it late at night just to prove to myself that I hadn't been broken, that I was still here. But even then, I didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't a daughter. I wasn't a student. I wasn't even a citizen. I was just a girl who washed dishes in a country where no one knew my name. But I was alive. The first time I made money that didn't come from flour or sweat, it came from a stock I barely understood. A shipping company out of Piraeus. I'd read a wrinkled article in a business journal someone left on a cafe table. Something about restructuring. I didn't know much, but I trusted my gut. Took 200 euros I'd been saving for winter boots and put it all in. It tripled in 2 weeks. That changed everything, not the money, the mindset. Lucia caught me once, staring at spreadsheets on my laptop, the bakery dark and quiet around me. You playing accountant now? She asked, smirking. Just curious, I said. But it was more than curiosity. I became obsessed. I watched free lectures on business, read translated investment blogs, and even found a grainy PDF of Warren Buffett's essays. I read it 3 times in 1 week, scribbled notes in the margins of old receipts. His voice stayed in my head while I cleaned trays or folded parchment. I started taking risks. Some failed, some paid off. By 20, I had clients. By 22, I had small investors. I registered a business under a Greek translation of my name. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. I helped local vendors with logistics, guided travelers on passive income, built a course for other undocumented kids like me, kids who wanted a future. Lucia never asked how much I was making, but she noticed. The new phone I gave her, the espresso machine I surprised her with, the gas bill that stopped arriving. One afternoon, she looked up from her coffee and said, "You walk different now, not like you're waiting for something to fall on you." I smiled because she was right. I started making anonymous donations to girls' shelters back in Florida. Always quiet, always hidden. Part of me told myself it was just about giving back. But deep down, I wanted someone to wonder, who's helping these girls the way we never did? Still, I never posted about my work, never used my full name. I didn't want fame. I wanted freedom. But no matter how far I got, I still carried that girl from the bakery inside me. The one who counted bread rolls and cried behind trash bins. She showed up in boardroom nerves, in flinches, in self-doubt. I wasn't healed, I was building. And then the past knocked. A certain address showed up in a foreclosure listing. Lucia was the first to see it, quietly sipping her morning coffee, flipping through old international papers. She didn't look up, just slid the paper toward me and tapped the corner. "You recognize that address?" I froze. My breath caught. I knew every digit, every crack in the sidewalk, every creak in the screen door. It was my childhood home. And this time, I wasn't the one being left behind. The crack in the driveway, the one we were never allowed to step on. I remembered it like it was yesterday. My parents' house in Naples, Florida. The one they bought a year after leaving me in Lisbon. The one they showed off on Facebook like it was some fairy tale rebirth. Now, it was on a foreclosure listing, and I couldn't stop staring at the address. I leaned back in my chair, hands flat on the table. A breath slipped out. One I didn't even know I'd been holding. There's a strange stillness that comes when the universe circles back and drops the very thing it once tore from your hands. It doesn't feel like revenge. Not really. Not at first. It feels like silence. Like standing at the edge of something vast and dark, right before the sky breaks. I didn't say anything to Lucia. I didn't need to. She saw the listing, saw my eyes. We flew to Florida on paper as part of Amal Strategies, the consulting brand I'd built from scratch. Neutral name, clean legal footprint, no trace of Alyssa Monroe. The auction took place in the parking lot of the Collier County Clerk's office. A strange blend of khakis, bow shoes, real estate investors squinting at iPads, and couples in wide brim hats fanning themselves with open brochures. No one looked at me twice. Lucia stood beside me, calm and unreadable. She held the bidder card like she'd done this 100 times. I whispered each bid number softly. She raised the card at just the right moments. Business, pure and simple. Until it wasn't. A man in a salmon-colored polo and mirrored sunglasses locked eyes with us across the crowd. He was bidding too, loudly, confidently, irritated we wouldn't back down, but Lucia didn't blink. When the auctioneer slammed the gavel, I didn't flinch. Sold, to bidder 173. Lucia lowered the card. We didn't smile. We didn't celebrate. We just stood there, letting the truth settle. My parents' home, their escape, their sanctuary, their fresh start, now belonged to me. I didn't feel satisfaction, not exactly. What I felt was power. Quiet, cold, controlled. A week later, the notice went out by certified mail. 30 days. They had no idea who sent it. No clue that the daughter they abandoned at 16 had just claimed their kitchen, their backyard, their bed. And I wasn't done. They requested a meeting. Their attorney contacted Lucia, assuming she was the new property owner. Wanted to negotiate. Requested a face-to-face with the buyer. I agreed. The meeting was held at a small real estate office near town. Private, professional, just neutral enough for discomfort to flourish. I arrived early, wearing a navy pantsuit, hair slicked back, large sunglasses, clean lines, clean posture. I wasn't hiding, I was positioned. They arrived late. My mother walked in first. Dressed in beige, sunglasses oversized, projecting fragility. My father shuffled behind, gripping a leather folder like it could shield him from truth. They sat, looked at me, didn't recognize me. Not until I slowly reached up and removed the sunglasses. My mother gasped. Color drained from her cheeks like water from a cracked bowl. My father blinked, frozen. They knew. "You left me," I said quietly. "In a foreign country, with no money, no passport, no goodbye." My mother's fingers twitched. "We thought you'd hate us less if we just disappeared," she whispered. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, regret. But it faded just as quickly. "You were impossible to live with," she added. "Always dramatic, always pushing back. We were drowning, Elisa. You were dragging us down." I didn't flinch. I simply nodded. You were supposed to be the lifeboat, I said. And I was just trying to survive. Not the ones who throw people overboard, I said, voice steady. My father still hadn't looked up. Say something, I told him. Look at me and tell me it wasn't your choice. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His fingers clutched the folder tighter like it could protect him. Your mother. I don't care what she thought. He flinched. You didn't even try to stop her, I continued. You let her erase me. When he finally spoke, his voice was sandpaper dry, crumbling, small. I didn't think you'd survive. I stood up, calm, composed. Well, I did. I reached into my bag and pulled out the paperwork. And now I own the house you live in. My mother blinked once. You're bluffing. Without a word, I slid the deed across the table, signed, stamped, official. Her hands hovered over it, trembling. Lucia stepped forward from the hallway, clipboard in hand. Her expression was unreadable. All business. We'll need the keys within 30 days, she said. You'll receive the formal move-out timeline by tomorrow. My mother stared at her, then back at me, as if waking from a bad dream. You can't do this, she said, voice breaking. We're your parents. No, I replied quietly. You were my parents, and you made your decision. She started to cry. At first it felt like a performance, like the worn-out role she always slipped into when the consequences showed up. But I didn't flinch. I didn't comfort. Lucia placed a small envelope in front of her. These are the legal instructions, she said. We suggest you read them thoroughly. My father still hadn't spoken again. His eyes were glassy now, hollow. But I felt nothing for him. Not pity. Not hate. Nothing. I turned to leave. Wait, my mother called after me. Why now? After all these years? I paused at the door, then looked over my shoulder. Because I needed you to see my face. When you realized I didn't need you to come back, I just needed you to know. I came back. And then I walked out. They posted about me, of course. Said I was heartless. Manipulated, said I brainwashed myself into believing they abandoned me. Called me a liar. Said I'd stolen their home. Lucia showed me the screenshots. Let them talk, I said. I'm too busy building something real. We converted the house within 4 months. The pale yellow siding got a fresh coat of deep sage green. We replaced the cracked kitchen tile with soft oak laminate, took down the live, laugh, love signs, and filled the space with books, warm lights, real plants. And in the master bedroom, 2 sets of bunk beds, brand new mattresses, lavender pillows, a lockbox for each girl who walked through the door, to keep her things safe, because too many of us had lived without that. Lucia called it the second door. Because sometimes, she said, the first one never opens. She began teaching again, baking classes every Wednesday. Her students were girls like me, too old to be anyone's responsibility, too young to survive alone. She taught them to knead dough, to trust their hands, to fail and try again. At our first open house, 6 girls came. 1 wouldn't make eye contact. 1 flinched at loud noises. Another cried when we gave her clean socks. Lucia just smiled. Let them breathe, she said. The rest comes later. That night, I stood in the backyard that used to be theirs, and now belonged to all of us. The porch light glowed soft and warm. Someone was laughing inside. Real laughter. Unfiltered, unafraid. Lucia stepped beside me, mug of tea in hand. Still feel like you don't have a home? I looked around, at the shoes by the door, the girl brushing her hair in the mirror, the quiet peace of safety. No, I said. This isn't just a home. It's where we all begin again. If you felt something while hearing my story, anger, hope, even heartbreak, don't just scroll past. Leave a comment. Tell me what you would have done. Tell that younger version of me she was never as alone as she thought. And if you've ever been abandoned, underestimated, or told you'd never survive, listen. Your worth is not defined by the people who walked away. It's shaped by what you choose to build next. So, hit that subscribe button, share your thoughts, and remind someone in the comments that rising from ashes is not only possible, it's powerful. We rebuild. We begin again. Together.